Y'all see that up there in the upper left-hand corner that says Extinction Rebellion? This is where this AOC is getting her information from. She goes onto these websites and believes everything they say, and she's evidently, probably, a part of this group. AOC gets her information from this. And let's scroll down here, and I'll show you some of the information she's believing and seeing. And wait until you see who this group is. And I'll leave links below the video so you too can go to this website and read through the bullshit in regards to her "we only got 12 years left on Earth" bullshit. Who is behind Extinction Rebellion? Extinction Rebellion, let me stop the video for a minute. Who is behind Extinction Rebellion? Extinction Rebellion is a movement made up of people from all walks of life. It started in response to the IPCC report that we only have 12 years to stop catastrophic climate change, and our understanding that we have entered the 6th mass extinction event. It started small and was launched in the UK on October 31st, 2018. It has grown very quickly, and there are now about 130 Extinction Rebellion groups across the UK, from Cornwall to Sunderland to Glasgow, and there are groups across the world, they say. The majority of people who work for, they don't really work, they donate their time, for Extinction Rebellion are volunteers. A small percentage is receiving living expenses. Yeah, from the government. Decisions are made based on a model of organizing called a self-organizing system. People do what they can according to their skills and time they can offer. Now I want to go back up here. You see this up here where it says IPCC report? We're going to go to that right now. So now we're on the IPCC website. You have to click on these words and information they put in there and research it. Not just read the article that's in front of you and take it for face value and just assume that, oh, they must know what they're talking about. As you dig deeper into these so-called idiots out here, we'll get down here to the bottom of it, and I'll leave a link below the video to this website so you too can see it for yourself. You got to scroll all the way down here to the bottom. Now, I don't know if you can see it or not, but you see it down there in the bottom right-hand corner where it says Habitat 7? Down here where I'm getting ready to click on it. Let me show you something. You see that right there? It says information designed for social impact. Isn't that amazing? They're tied together. They're socialist, communist, Marxist, terrorists. That's what this group is. And don't let them bullshit you. Very important that you read this very carefully. You see how a little bit of research and knowing something about what's going on can lead you to what these people are really about. Habitat 7. Risky Business and Habitat 7. Founded by co-chairs Michael Bloomberg, right there, Henry Paulson, and what really gets me, this guy, Tom Steyer. And if you don't know who Tom Steyer is, he's the guy that keeps wanting to push for impeaching Trump and has spent like $30 million trying to get him out of office. He's a California Democrat, liberal, communist, socialist, Marxist, billionaire terrorist, like George Soros. Research who Tom Steyer is. We'll get into that later in the video for those of you who aren't capable of researching who Tom Steyer is in depth. The Risky Business Project examines the economic risks and opportunities of climate change. Yeah, opportunities. Jacking up your electric rate, your gas bills, and your petroleum bills. Opportunities for those who have money invested in those, while the ratepayers get screwed. The U.S. economy faces significant risks from unabated climate change. Every year of inaction serves to broaden and deepen those risks. The Risky Business Project will assess the economic and technical feasibility of reducing these climate risks by transitioning to an economy powered by clean energy. Of course, they don't never tell you how much it's going to cost you ratepayers, meaning your electric bills, your gas bills, and your petroleum bills. They don't tell you that. How many of us out here have seen our electric bills double and triple in the last 8 to 10, 15 years with all this supposed clean green energy bullshit? Habitat has partnered with Risky Business to help build their digital strategy and redesign their web tools. These are for people that have a lot of money invested in green energy and want to make a lot of money at your expense, at your naiveness and how clueless you are to buy into this bullshit. Tom Steyer, multi-billionaire out of California. He's a Democratic liberal, a communist, socialist, Marxist terrorist. That's what he is. Henry Paulson, research him. Michael Bloomberg. No, should know who he is. He's another rich asshole. And they want governments to invest at least $1 trillion a year in clean energy. $1 trillion a year in clean energy. Well, where are they going to get that money along with all these other taxes we're paying? You guessed it. You. Through higher taxes. And they're going to take them higher taxes to the point you're almost broke and you can't afford to do anything else because you're paying all these taxes. And not just clean energy taxes, but sales taxes, property taxes, gas taxes, cigarette taxes, liquor taxes, taxes on everything that you buy, not to mention your income taxes. These people have no clue what they're talking about. They throw these figures out there and they just make up shit. And people like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio, just believes all this shit. She never really held a real job other than a bartender. Now she works for the government, getting money from you, the taxpayers, and she wants a raise. Isn't that amazing? They're government leeches. They throw out all these little bullshit scenarios. It's just ridiculous. I'll leave a link to this below the video too, so you can read it for yourself. And this is where little old AOC gets her information. And she believes it because it says so. We have 12 years to limit climate change catastrophe, warns the UN. And we all know it sits on the board of the UN. Bunch of communists out to steal your money. The world's leading climate scientists, that are about 22, 25 years old, if that, have warned there is only a dozen years for global warming to be kept to a maximum 1.5 degrees Celsius, beyond which even a half a degree will significantly worsen the risk of drought, floods, extreme heat, and poverty for hundreds of millions of people. Oh, it just sounds so awful. The authors of the landmark report by the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, released on Monday, say urgent and unprecedented changes are needed to reach the target, which they say is affordable and feasible, although it lies at the most ambitious end of the Paris Agreement pledge to keep temperatures between 1.5 and 2 degrees Celsius. The half a degree difference could also prevent corals from being completely eradicated and ease pressure on the Arctic, according to the 1.5C study, which was launched after approval at a final preliminary of all 195 countries in the Incheon in South Korea that saw delegates hugging one another, with some in tears. Oh my God, some were in tears. In other words, you got a bunch of fucking snowflakes that believe all this bullshit. And this is where AOC gets her bullshit. And because they fed it to the UN, and then the UN puts out a statement, they believe it because it's from the UN, according to the UN. And where'd they get their information? From the idiots I just showed you at the beginning of the video who made up all this shit. They're communists. It's another way of stealing your money through coming up with all these dreams and bullshit scenarios. And we must tax you to get rid of all carbon taxes and get rid of fossil fuels and put millions of people out of work. Meanwhile, they don't have a clue how they're going to run that earth mover to move all that dirt to build buildings, or what they're going to use to cut trees down out there in the Northwest, what they're going to use for sawmills. It's just magically all going to happen through solar energy all of a sudden. You're just going to throw up a panel in 10 minutes and presto, you got energy to run all this shit. These people are clueless. Young college idiots. Or in what I like to call them is university dipshits. It's a line in the sand, and what it says to our species is that this is the moment we must act now, said Deborah Roberts, co-chair of the Working Group on Impacts. Another college universified idiot. This is the largest clarion bell from the science community, and I hope it mobilizes people and dents the mood of complacency. Policymakers commissioned the report at the Paris climate talks in 2016, but since then the gap between science and politics have widened, and Donald Trump has promised to withdraw the U.S., the world's biggest source of historical emissions, from the accord. Oh my God, it's so awful. Donald Trump's going to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. Oh my God, because it's all full of shit by these young college communist Marxist socialists. Yep, Donald Trump has promised to withdraw the U.S., the world's biggest source of historical emissions, from the accord, from the Paris Climate Accord. The first round of Brazil's presidential election on Sunday put Jair Bolsonaro into a strong position to carry out his threat to do the same, and also open the Amazon rainforest for agribusiness. Oh my God, there's somebody else. The Brazilian president is also going to follow along with Donald Trump. This is just awful. Get out your Kleenexes and toilet paper because you're about to have some tears. The world is currently 1 Celsius warmer than pre-industrial levels. Didn't feel like it the last 2 or 3 winters here where I live. Following devastating hurricanes in the U.S., and there's always been devastating hurricanes clear back to the 1920s and 1800s. So now they're trying to whip up this bullshit. Record droughts in Cape Town and forest fires in the Arctic. Oh, people believe that shit. The IPCC makes clear that climate change is already happening. There's always going to be climate change. Has been since the world was formed. Upgraded its risks, warning from previous reports, and warned that every fraction of additional warming could worsen the impact. See how they put this shit out? Oh my God, this is just so awful. There's going to be climate change. There's been climate change ever since the damn earth was formed. As it revolves and the galaxy goes through its changes, so does the earth, the moon, Mars, Saturn, and every other planet out there. But they use this scare tactic as a way to try to tax you more, and that's what it's about. It's about money. It ain't about climate change. They want more of your money, whether you're a business or whether you're a homeowner, doesn't matter. If they can tax you more to steal more of your money to fund their bullshit and spread their lies and fantasies, and they're going to get by with it. And I don't blame Donald Trump for pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord or that other guy down there with the new Brazilian president. They're waking up to these snake oil salesman tactics is what they are. They're full of shit. They're snake oil salesmen. Gypsy snake oil salesmen is what they're selling here. Scientists who reviewed the 6,000 works referenced in the report said the change caused by just a half a degree came as a revelation. We can see there is a difference, and it's substantial, Roberts said. At 1.5 degrees Celsius, the proportion of global population exposed to water stress could be 50% lower than at 2 degrees Celsius. It notes, food scarcity would be less of a problem, and hundreds of millions of fewer people, particularly in poor communities, would be at risk of climate-related poverty. Yeah, right. And this is coming from the IPCC website. Who do you think makes up this IPCC group? A bunch of college, universified, communist, Marxist, socialist. They're not going to come out and admit that. Not by any means. I will leave a link to this website below the video as well. You can read through it yourself. I'm not going to read through it word for word. But there is not one mention anywhere in any of these websites about what it's going to cost businesses as to the dollars financially, or what it's going to cost you personally in taxes. Not one word about this. This is all scare tactics. Because if they were truly worried about this global warming shit and what we could do about it, they'd be mentioning how much it would cost businesses. But they don't want to talk about that. They just want to shove this down everybody's throat and try to brainwash them into believing all this bullshit's true. Not one word, not one fucking word on any of these websites about how much it's going to cost businesses, not just in the United States, but across the globe, the world, per dollar, and how they're going to afford it, along with all the other taxes. And what it's going to cost you, the homeowner. Maybe you're an apartment dweller, whatever, wherever you're living. Your utilities are going to go up so high. Let me give you an example. Let's say you got a $700 a month, maybe a $1,500 a month house payment, or you're paying that much for an apartment or a duplex or townhome. Your utilities are going to exceed, and I'm not talking just electric, I'm talking everything, are going to exceed what your rent, your house payment, or your mortgage is. Some of you are already experiencing that because of your utility companies are raising their rates so much over this carbon tax and global bullshit that they got going on. It's profitable to the utility companies, but it's stealing money out of you people and making you poorer. And there ain't one damn word about this on any of these websites, what it will do to business and what it will do to the economy. There's a reason for that. Because it's all bullshit. All this global warming is to steal more money in the way of taxes, high taxes, and shift us into a complete catastrophe around the world. Not just the United States, but Europe as well. Because if they were truly concerned, these young kids, fresh out of college in these communist liberal universities around the world, they'd be concerned about that. but they're not. They don't really care how many people lose their jobs due to layoffs. Because the more companies have to pay in taxes, the less revenue they have to pay employees and benefits. They're going to have to cut somewhere to play their game. It's going to mean mass layoffs. You don't hear one word out of these people. Or how they're going to, in 12 years, they think they're just going to spend $1 trillion and all of a sudden we're going to have everything powered by some other venue. Well, you tell that to the loggers up there in the Pacific Northwest with their trucks, their heavy machinery. What are they going to replace the fuel with? What, solar panels? How are you going to plug them in? Oh, they're just going to all of a sudden make substations and you just plug them into the substation. Well, that costs a lot of money. And you got to buy the property to build them substations. And it takes time to build all that shit. And those solar panels ain't cheap. And that was heavy equipment. They need a lot of power. Those logging trucks and dump trucks up there need a lot of power to pull the weight. You don't hear any of that. Earth movers, bulldozers, track hoes, bobcats. I mean, these people are absolutely clueless. I mean, it's just pathetic. Snow removal machinery up there in the Pacific Northwest and in the West in general and across the United States. It's just, these people live in a dream world. A fantasy world that is provided to them through government grants, getting millions of dollars through the government, and this is their way of keeping a job at your expense because the government gets their money from the taxpayers. And I'll say it again. The government gets their money from the taxpayers, whether you're a business or whether you're just a worker. And this is the way these people keep their jobs. Al Gore has been pushing this bullshit for so many years while he lives in his big house and flies around on his jet, just like Bernie fucking Sanders and his bullshit. While he flies around on his jet, preaching all this bullshit about climate change. Same shit. And that's what these people do. They live in big houses. They fly around on private jets and commercial airplanes, yet they're worried about climate change. And that you need to be cutting back, but you don't see them cutting back. I think the last time I heard Al Gore's house was like 20,000 square foot or something like that, or 50,000 square foot. Not a solar panel on it. Yeah. Why do you need that big a house, Al Gore? And why are you flying around on commercial planes? Why don't you walk or ride a bicycle if you're so concerned about climate change? Nope. You got to take jets everywhere. Don't that use fuel? Adding to the global economy or the global climate change? Just like Bernie Sanders. Likes to preach it, but he don't practice what he preaches. Do you, Bernie? Because you're full of shit. That's why. This is about stealing more money from the government, and the government gets their money from you through higher taxes. Make no mistake about it. And according to the IPCC Fifth Assessment Report, the Fifth Assessment Report was finalized in 2014. As had been the case in the past, the outline of the AR-5 was developed through a scoping process which involved climate change experts from all relevant disciplines and users of IPCC reports. Climate change. You mean like Al Gore? And then later in this Wikipedia article, it goes on to say more than 800 authors. In other words, people that don't have a lot of anything better to do, like these college and universified commie idiots, wrote this shit. Selected from around 3,000 nominations. Notice, it does not say what those nominations are. It just says nominations. Who knows what they are? Were involved in writing the report. Lead authors, meetings and number of workshops and expert meetings. Doesn't say what those expert meetings were or workshops were or where they were held in support of the assessment process. So that goes to show you limited information. But you get some young, naive, clueless liberal who reads this, 800 authors and 3,000 nominations, and they just believe whatever is smoke is blowed up their ass. On the 14th of December 2012, drafts of the working group report were leaked and posted on the internet. The release of the summary for policymakers, in other words, politicians, occurred on the 27th of December 2013. Haldor Thorgerson, a UN official, warned that because big companies are known to fund the undermining of climate science, because they know it's all bullshit, scientists should be prepared for an increase in negative publicity at the time. Vested interests are paying for the discrediting of scientists all the time. Yeah, because you're all full of shit. You write stories, make-believe, to make yourselves look busy and credible so you can continue getting funding from the government to keep your job. Any government, anywhere. And that is a fact. Because if you weren't spreading fantasies and stories and hypothetical bullshit, then there'd be no need to have you, to fund you, to pay you to do what you do. So you have to hype and blow smoke up everybody's ass with your fantasies and stories. Otherwise, you won't get funding from whatever government you're getting funding from. And if you work for a university or college who's paying you, we all know that universities and colleges get a large part of their funding from the government. And the government gets their money from the taxpayers, whether you're a business or just a working person. Be very clear about that. Otherwise, there'd be no need for you to have a job writing these Hollywood stories. I like this next sentence, because how many of us have gotten an email from General Ban Ki-moon claiming that somebody died and left us a large inheritance? They always use this guy. General Ban Ki-moon sends you an email saying that you've been left a large inheritance and we'd like for you to be the trustee. Making the finalization of the physical science basis, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon addressed the IPCC at Stockholm on the 27th of September 2013. He stated that the heat is on. We must act. Jennifer Morgan from the World Resources Institute said hopefully the IPCC will inspire leadership from the mom and pop business leader to the mayor to the head of state. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, another communist liberal Democrat, responded to the report saying this is yet another wake-up call. Kind of like Al Gore. They love to spread their lies and bullshit. This is yet another wake-up call. Those who deny the science or choose excuses over action are playing with fire. No, we just read through the bullshit and see what it is, that's what it is bullshit that you're trying to spread for your own personal wealth and gain, which is what it boils down to. And this is exactly what I'm getting at. People with too much time on their hands that don't actually work. They sit around in their offices and their little cubicles and they make up these, I call them Hollywood stories. The full text of Climate Change 2013, the physical science basis, was released in an unedited form on Monday, 30th September 2013. It was over 2,000 pages long and cited 9,200 scientific publications. Really? Boy, somebody's got a lot of time on their hands to write stories, fantasies, illusions to people that are delusional. And we all know who they are, don't we? Unbelievable. 2,000 pages long and cited 9,200 scientific publications. And we all know who wrote those 9,200 scientific publications too, don't we? Yeah. That's how they get their funding. If they don't write these Hollywood stories, these illusions, they won't have a job. They'll be out of work. It's just comical. And this is what AOC believes in. This bullshit. Before I leave this video, I want you to go through this with me. The UN, United Nations, admits that the Paris climate deal was a fraud. This is dated November 2nd, 2017. Global Hot Air. Here's a United Nations climate report that environmentalists probably don't want anybody to read. It says that even if every country abides by the grand promises they made last year in Paris to reduce greenhouse gases, the planet would still be doomed. When President Obama hitched America to the Paris Accords in 2016, he declared that it was the moment that we finally decided to save our planet. And when Trump pulled out of this deal this year, he was berated by legions of environmentalists for killing it. But it turns out the Paris Accord was little more than a sham that will do nothing to save the planet, which is what I've been trying to tell everybody. It's not about saving the planet, it's about taking your money. According to the latest annual UN report on the emissions gap, this is where I'm at right now, the Paris Agreement will provide only a third of the cuts in greenhouse gas that environmentalists claim is needed to prevent catastrophic warming. If every country involved in those accords abides by their pledges, which they won't, between now and 2030, which is dubious proposition, temperatures will still rise by 3 degrees Celsius by 2100. The goal of the Paris Agreement was to keep the global temperature increase to under 2 degrees. Eric Solheim, head of the UN Environmental Program, which produces the annual report, said this: 1 year after the Paris Agreement entered into force, we still find ourselves in a situation where we are not doing nearly enough to save hundreds of millions of people from a miserable future. Governments, the private sector, and civil society must bridge this catastrophic climate gap. But this is a fantasy. The list of what would need to be done by 2020, which this is 2019, we're talking next year, just around the corner, 8 months from now or so, a little over 2 years from now, includes boosting renewable energy share to 30%, pushing electric cars to 15% of new car sales, which I don't know where we're going to charge all these cars up at, because there aren't that many places to do that, and nobody's home is really set up for it. Not to mention what it's going to do to your electric bill, as we're finding out. Up from less than 1% today. Doubling mass transit use, cutting air travel, CO2 emissions by 20%, and coming up with $1 trillion for climate action. And coal-fired power plants would have to be phased out worldwide starting now. Hope you enjoy living without electricity. all you companies and all you homes out there and apartments and businesses and convenience stores, you're not going to have any way to pump your gas or have electricity to run your cash registers. Sounds like a really good fucking plan. According to the report, phasing out coal consumption is an indispensable condition for achieving international climate change targets. That means putting a halt to any new coal plants while starting to phase out the ones currently in use. Good luck with that. There are currently 273 gigawatts of coal capacity under construction around the world and another 570 gigawatts in the pipeline. That would represent a 42% increase in global energy production from coal. Does anyone really think developing countries who need coal as a cheap source of fuel to grow their economies will suddenly call it quits? So does this mean that the planet is doomed? Hardly. As we have noted in this space many times, all these forecasts of global catastrophe are based on computer models that have been unreliable predictions of warming, and all the horror stories assume the worst. So what does make clear, however, is that posturing by government leaders in Paris was just that. Posturing. None of these countries intended to take the drastic and economically catastrophic steps environmentalists claim are needed to prevent climate change doomsday. As such, Trump was right to stop pretending. Highlighted right there. Whether you believe in climate change or not, the Paris Climate Accord amounted to nothing or pretty close to it. Even the UN admits it now. I'm going to highlight that. Whether you believe in climate change or not, the Paris Climate Accord amounted to nothing or pretty close to it. Even the UN admits that now. Right there. So you see how the push for bullshit, people buy into it. They don't just buy into it. There's an agenda behind it, and that agenda is to raise your taxes and cost you more money, to take more money and put it in to those who have invested in these supposed green energy policies, solar systems, wind, if you've got money to invest in that shit so you can make even more money. It's just shifting it from oil and gas and coal to energy, wind energy, solar energy. They're hoodwinking you. They're selling you bullshit. Now, most people out here who aren't rich don't have that kind of money to invest in businesses like that. So this is just scare tactics so they can make more money. The rich people like Tom Steyer, some of these politicians, some of these global warming professional artists, con artists. It's all it is. I'll put a link to this below the video so you too can read it. There's going to be a lot of links for you to read. Below the video, in the description, below the video. Wake up, people. Quit believing these snake oil salesmen that want to sell you bullshit. They're like used car salesmen selling you a lemon. And that's what you got here, is a lemon with all this global warming and Paris climate deal. They're snake oil salesmen trying to sell you snake oil and pawn it off as medicine when it's really nothing more than horse piss. Horse piss in a fancy bottle with a fancy label. Don't fall for it. Leave comments below the video.